Greetings, Maniacs! Welcome to part 2 of my Q&A. Let's get right to the questions. Who are some of your favorite metal YouTubers? Who would you like to collab with? Okay, going down the list. Dante's Dead, Jayhawk Films, who unfortunately are no longer with us, Thrash TV, Emily Herweg, Maddie Danger, who's kind of metal, kind of goth, kind of all over the place, Heavy Metal Entertainment, Infidel Amsterdam, one of the originals, and Noise Dosage Media. I also enjoy Tank the Tech, who basically covers different areas of tour managing, touring life, and different genres. He does talk about metal. Spectre Sound Studios, of course, he has influenced my mixes, and in a tangible way. My mixes sound so much better now because of his tips than they did when I was 12 and 13 recording. Also Become the Night, because, sometimes I'm not really into those big proggy type videos that he does, but he does talk about musicological stuff that I enjoy. There are plenty of other channels that I've watched sporadically that I enjoy, but I may not be able to think of them off the top of my head. But as far as who I want to collab with, anybody interesting. I'm open to collabing with whoever. I just want to be interested in what they're doing and make sure that it's not a channel that wants to have me in their video because they want to ride my coattails. Unfortunately, I've had to deal with that once or twice, and yeah, I'd love to get on a punk channel, I'd love to get on a goth channel, and it doesn't even have to be a music channel necessarily, just, if any of these creators want to work with me, then they are more than welcome to hit me up. How did you learn to play all these instruments, and how did you go from just growling to sort of singing to actually good singing? I took guitar lessons when I was a preteen. My guitar instructor was a blues guy who went by the name of Michael Pilgrim. He's no longer with us, unfortunately, but he taught me the fundamentals of guitar, and from there I learned bass, and I got a drum set when I was 14, and all my other instruments, I basically just went on YouTube and taught myself. So some stuff I learned from YouTube, and a lot of stuff I learned just by trying to play what I was listening to. So when I was 14, I started listening to grindcore, so Terrorizer, World Downfall. Once I heard Pete Sandoval play on that album, I was like, I want to learn how to play like that. And it all went from there. What was the craziest live performance you've ever attended? Did you regret attending? The craziest live performance was when I saw Cannibal Corpse, Obituary, Abysmal Dawn, and Cryptopsy in 2016. I have never seen so much stage diving at one show. I myself stage dived probably a dozen times. Now, of course, there were a couple fights that broke out. This was in Wilmington, North Carolina, college town. But wow, I don't think I've ever been to a show that intense ever again. I look forward to the day where it does happen, but so far, no dice. I would love to relive that moment. Are your parents in the music business? The only musical person in my family was my grandfather, who played in some local bands, and other than that, the music it came to me. Do you like reading? If so, what are some of your all-time favorite books? This book here, Choosing Death by Albert Mudrian. This has probably given me the biggest transformative change of my lifetime because it set me on the path towards death metal, grindcore, and black metal. So this is basically the history of death metal and grindcore, and in the back of the book, there's a list of essential albums. And what I used to do after I'd mow some grass or after I'd get a check for my birthday or money for Christmas, I would go on Amazon or iTunes and I would buy some of these albums in this list. And yeah, this has really set me on the path towards metal, and I can't thank Albert Mudrian enough for writing this book. Let's see, Get in the Van by Henry Rollins, of course. I love Black Flag, and yes, I do love the Henry era of Black Flag. No apologies to the haters. And what I love about this book, it's an honest portrayal of what it's like to actually go on tour as a small band. And what else was cool is that Henry talks about succeeding and, his version of success in his own scene. And a lot of people, they called him rock star. They gave him shit for having this type of success. And I've personally dealt with this from peers who were jealous of my following, jealous of people asking me for pictures at shows. And reading Henry going through this, it resonated with me. Of course, this was Henry at the beginning of his career. Now, through his life, he would become bigger. He would get roles in movies. He would do cool things with his bands, and he's made it out okay despite everybody fighting against him. I admire that. And following the same theme, we have Only Death is Real, the book about Celtic Frost. And Celtic Frost, they're probably one of the heaviest bands to ever exist, and they sort of face the same thing. You know, they were originators in their genre, and a lot of people around them gave them shit for making that type of music. And they pushed through. They pushed through anyway. Thankfully, this book stops at 2 Megatherion because nobody cares about the albums afterwards, but you know, the making of these albums and the story of what it was like to be originators in this genre in Switzerland, of all places. It's fascinating. And they were teenagers when all this happened, and I was a teenager when I read this book, so this spoke to me as somebody who wanted to have a life in music. And I think I have plowed through very similar to how these guys have plowed through. I'm just waiting for my big break.
Here's some of my other books. We've got Aaron Tanner's photo books by Melodic Virtue. I'm currently reading Turned Inside Out, the book about Obituary. Let's see, we've got Misery Obscura, some Nightwish books. Oh yeah, plenty of great stuff. True Norwegian Black Metal, that rare Nightwish book that I did a whole video about, Let There Be Guar, and here's the Nightwish book for you. It's called Dark Passion Gallery.
If you could reform a band, which band would you reform? I would reform Susie and the Banshees in a heartbeat. I would love to see them. I've always heard legendary things about how they performed live in the 80s and the 90s and how great they were. I would love to see the Butthole Surfers someday. That's probably not going to happen, but we'll see. And personally, I would like to clone the DNA of all the Ramones, or if we could somehow invent the technology to resurrect them from the dead and hopefully genetically engineer it so that way Joey's health issues and Dee Dee's health issues and Johnny's personality issues weren't at play, and maybe we could get several albums, many tours. Yeah, let's resurrect the Ramones and make that happen. Are there artists that changed your view on genres you hated before? So, Nine Inch Nails flirted with synth-pop on the Pretty Hate Machine album, but it was still an industrial album. As far as synth-pop goes, it always sounded a little too clean for my liking. Look, if I'm going to listen to electronic music or goth music, I want it to sound kind of gritty. And so Depeche Mode, despite a lot of people liking them, I couldn't really get into them for a while. It took me 3 or 4 albums before everything finally clicked. You know, I listened to Music for the Masses, I listened to Black Celebration, I listened to Songs of Faith and Devotion, and I was like, this just isn't doing it for me. Finally, I listened to Violator. Suddenly, all the other albums sounded great. What is the weirdest / obscure metal band you know? Weirdest? Probably Brain Tentacles. I saw them open for Guar several years ago, and they had a saxophone, they had all sorts of crazy stuff going on stage. Probably them. What is your favorite non-metal band? Nine Inch Nails. And they're probably my favorite band of all time, followed closely by Skinny Puppy. Do you like Ministry's new album? Hopium for them asses. I listened to it once, and I never need to listen to it ever again. It's okay, but I think the problem with new Ministry albums is that I want them to be as good as Filthpig and all those earlier albums, and to me they're just not. But with Paul Barker back in the mix, they are currently in the studio making their next album, I would imagine that the weird left field and psychedelic side of Ministry will come back, and I look forward to it. Do you have any interesting or funny job stories? Not so much funny and maybe not so much interesting, but I keep coming back to these things every once in a while for reasons that I will explain at the end. But I used to work at a restaurant as a dishwasher, and there were 2 people at the same restaurant who got their comeuppance in one way or another. There was this prima donna bartender who I suspect was undiagnosed bipolar or something, because she just... If the restaurant was too busy, she freaked out. If it was too slow, she freaked out. If you looked at her the wrong way, she freaked out. And unfortunately, our boss at the time just let her do it. Eventually, she had a nervous breakdown and didn't come into work, which my boss thought meant that she quit. So he never called her back, and she never worked there again. We were all happy to not have to deal with her anymore. Also, one of the cooks at this restaurant, we went to school together. He was an asshole when I went to school with him, and he was an asshole later when I worked with him. Well, he had a bad attitude, he talked down to the waitresses, he talked shit about people, And the restaurant, if you worked in the kitchen, which included the dishwasher, you ate for free. So sometimes I would request that he make me a burger, and he'd be like, "Oh, we're too busy, I can't do it." So what I started doing was leaving my order on a ticket and putting it at the expediter table, and he would just throw my tickets away. Yeah, he was a prick. And eventually I had to start making my own burgers because I was taught how to do it. I would find out years later that he was shot and killed during a drug deal gone bad. He dealt with drugs in high school and college when I went to college with him. And, let's see, he cheated on his girlfriends, he cheated on his wife. And when I heard that he died, I didn't care. You know, I didn't celebrate his death, I wasn't surprised that it happened, but I was over there thinking, yep, that sounds like a situation he would get himself into. So the moral of the story is, sometimes these bad people in your life do get a comeuppance of some sort. It doesn't happen often enough, but when it does feel satisfying, I will admit. What band was your gateway into metal? As far as underground metal, Population Reduction. They ruled, man. They blended comedy with metal, and half those songs were about smoking weed, and also one of the guys got me further into metal. We have been pen pals for the longest time and still talk from time to time. In my opinion, Angel Witch's self-titled album is the greatest new wave of British heavy metal album, and also my third favorite album of all time. If you had to pick the greatest new wave of British heavy metal album, what would you pick? I could give you stereotypical answers like Painkiller, or Screaming for Vengeance, or Number of the Beast. I'm going to say Motorhead, Everything Louder Than Everything Else. Not one of the studio albums, not Hammersmith. This is my favorite Motorhead live album because, for one, it has 2 discs, and also most of my favorite Motorhead songs are on this. You know, I love Bomber, I love Overkill, I love the albums. But to me, Motorhead were better as a live band. I really wish that I had the chance to go see Motorhead live before Lemmy passed. I did make up for it around last Christmas, though, because I got to see Lemmy's grave. Are you single? No, I'm available. In what ways do you think you have grown and matured as a person since starting YouTube, and has making videos played any role in that? I grew up in a small town in eastern North Carolina, and before I started YouTube, I got the general impression that nobody really gave a fuck about me. And, you know, there weren't really a lot of metalheads. I couldn't really go to shows unless I drove 2 hours away, 3 hours away. And once I got on YouTube, that gave me an outlet, because part of the problem for me was I didn't really have anybody to talk to about my music, because I just couldn't find anybody or that many people who listened to it. And going on YouTube gave me that audience to talk to. I mean, that's been the whole MO of this channel, was just talking about things that I love and bands that I like. And it made an impact because a lot of people responded well to the channel, well to the videos, and I got to meet people who love these videos and love the same music that I got to love. And when I go to shows, you know, if I go see Cannibal Corpse and somebody walks up to me, "Hey man, I love your video," you know, that warms my heart. And it showed me that there's a big wide world out there, because, you know, there's more than just shitty North Carolina. I have viewers from all over the world. It amazes me, really, how many viewers I have from different places and who watches the videos. Even some of my favorite bands have seen my videos, and it gives me the push to keep going, because these are people that made a big impact on my life, and I'm making somewhat of an impact on other people's lives to varying degrees. And even some of my favorite bands, they've given me the encouragement to go on, and they say that they like what I'm doing, and that has helped. These videos have also allowed me to get a better sense of people, because I've gotten to meet a lot more people through the years, and you know, it's been nice. I wouldn't trade any of it. What was your most disappointing live show experience? Like a band you were genuinely stoked to see but then completely blew. I already talked about Buzzoven in the other Q&A video, but I would like to add Anthrax. I saw them in 2018 in Charlotte opening for Slayer, and I thought they sucked. Their sound mix was awful, and Joey kept missing every other word. I actually walked around and got food and got drinks while they were playing, and I'm not somebody who typically does that. I'm usually somebody who just sits and watches the band. But the band was so bad that day, I was like, no, I don't have to pay attention to this. Do you like finding great old school albums from bands out in the wild, like at record stores, flea markets, etc., like I do? Or do you just buy them online and save time? Well, it depends. Like, sometimes I go to McKay's and I end up buying stuff that I'm not even looking for because there's stuff in their racks that looks appealing to me. Like, yesterday I went to McKay's and I saw Iron Maiden The X Factor. I've never owned that album physically, I wasn't looking for it, but I was like, okay, I can do some Iron Maiden. Now, for specific releases, typically I go on Discogs or eBay and check those out because I can save money doing it sometimes, and also I can make sure that I'm getting the version that I want, you know, with the right masterings, the right bonus tracks, the right artworks. What is your favorite thing about the Ripper Owens albums? I personally think he brought some serious edge and drive that Judas Priest needed. Also, what's your favorite songs from Jugulator and Demolition? Rob Halford is one of the greatest metal vocalists of all time. Ripper Owens, you may think whatever you want about him as a person and his projects after Judas Priest, but Jugulator at least is a really good album. I love Bullet Train, I love Bloodstained. Really heavy album. Demolition's okay, I don't hate it, but they were clearly going through the motions. Who would you say are your biggest inspirations for your vocal style, both cleans and screams? Trent Reznor was a pretty big influence on vocals across the spectrum. When I was doing the song Downstream, I was actually looking at a vocal coach's video on how Trent did his vocals for the song The Becoming. So that's what I was trying to model my voice after. Of course, Nivek Ogre from Skinny Puppy. And as far as the metal stuff, we have Dave Brockie from Gwar. When I did the song Dame of Darkness, there's a part in the song where I'm talking about, we must worship the gluteus metalis and praise its beholder. That's a Dave moment right there. In fact, there are all sorts of nods to different vocalists in that song. That part where I'm talking about tattoo of vampire, that's Halford. I was also thinking of Bon Scott because I've been listening to AC/DC since I was a kid. And as far as my growling goes, Carl Willits from Bolt Thrower and John Tardy from Obituary. And of course John Hamm from Agalloch. He's a bit of an inspiration vocally as well because I like that rasp that he does when he growls. Yeah, plenty of great inspirations from all over the place as far as vocals go. Any post-punk, dream pop, darkwave, shoegaze, post-black metal, black gaze, or synth pop bands you like, but your metalhead side won't let you go further? You know, I'm not really that concerned with that type of thing. You know, a lot of people, they have hang-ups about music they listen to because, you know, they have a bit of an identity crisis. But I'm a metalhead, I shouldn't be listening to this. Or they wonder about what their friends are thinking. Look, posers are people who pretend to be something they're not. I don't make any bones about it. I will tell you straight up, I like Cocteau Twins. I like Drab Majesty. I like Skinny Puppy. I like Agalloch. I like Tori Amos. I like the Gorillaz. And I like metal. So, you know, a lot of people get hung up on labels. I'm not one of those people. So yes, there are plenty of bands that I enjoy, and I don't let anything else get in the way of it. What is your dream that you have been wanting to fulfill for a long time? I dream of getting out of North Carolina. I hate this place. Please, get me to New Orleans, or New York, or Portland, or Lancaster, Pennsylvania, or anywhere. What do you love most about metal and goth music? The freedom, the individuality, the musicality of it. This is music that goes beyond the mainstream music where a lot of that's in 4/4, single tempo, not a lot of time changes. This is music that's played from the soul and not made by rich producers who are using pre-programmed beats. Also, a lot of it's extreme music for extreme people sometimes, but it's also made from the heart. You know, I like real stuff, and metal to me is real, goth stuff to me is real. I mean, I listen to Rosetta Stone, and it beats anything I'm going to hear on the top 40 any day of the week. Are you a fan of sludge metal? Absolutely. Corrosion of Conformity, Crowbar, Down, Acid Bath, Buzzoven, Grief. Those are great bands, I think. And some of those venture into the doom metal territory as well, which I like it when bands do that. I'd say that Dystopia has a little bit of sludge sound in their mix, so yeah, definitely a fan of that. Are you into any of the newer, well-known death metal bands? Absolutely. Frozen Soul, Gatecreeper's reasonably new, Necrot's reasonably new. Contusion, a friend of mine, started. Plenty of great new bands out there. You just gotta look for them and look hard to find them, because with every great band, there are about 10 mediocre bands, so you gotta sift through things a little bit, you know? Do you like any post-metal and or black gaze? Well, I'm a pretty big Godflesh fan, I'm a pretty big Agalloch fan, which I guess could count as post-metal. Wolves in the Throne Room, they flirted with it from time to time. Jesu, while we're talking about Godflesh. Jesu I listened to more when I was younger than I do now, because I kind of have to be in the mood to listen to it. And the little bit that I heard from Deathhaven I was okay with, so yeah, I'm pretty versatile. Was there ever any time in your life when you considered being normal, cutting your hair, and quitting listening to metal? No. Generally, if you listen to the same thing over and over and over again, you're going to get bored with what you listen to, even if it's something you really enjoy. I've always been a big industrial fan, I love punk, I like rock, so it's always been reasonably versatile through time. There are times where I'm listening to goth and industrial music more than metal. There's other times where I'm listening to metal more than anything else. So it just kind of rotates depending on my mood, depending on the time of the year, depending on what I'm going through. But at no point has it ever become a question to cut my hair, or to not listen to Obituary, or to not listen to Carcass. Just give it time. You'll get back into it. What do you think happens to us after we die? I don't know, and frankly don't care. I am not a religious or spiritual person at all. In fact, it's not really something I think about often, so I don't know. I just live my life to the best of my ability. I do my best to be a good person and to do good for those around me, and that's really where it ends, and whatever happens, happens. What's your opinion on the current state of the metal scene? Is it better or worse than 5 to 10 years ago? Metal is thriving. As long as there are new bands and new subgenres being made, the metal will be kept alive. I think the problem that we're facing, and this is a problem we've been facing for the last 10, 15 years or so, is that metal tends to self-cannibalize. So what I find is a lot of the same big bands are going on tour with each other, and I'm kind of sick of that, because it's not uncommon to see the same bands over and over and over again, because you're meaning to go see another band. I want to see some new stuff. You know, like, why not just get some young, fresh blood who are coming up in the ranks and give them their shot? That's how Ghost got big, in a way. You know, Iron Maiden took them out on tour. If Iron Maiden could do it, then why the hell aren't Slayer doing it? What is your favorite instrument? The Hydrasynth Explorer is one of my favorite instruments. I love synthesizers, I've wanted one for the longest time, and I finally got this several months back, and it is a rather versatile piece of gear. It's also inexpensive when compared to other synthesizers. I would also like to give a shout out to the Harley Benton JA Baritone, which is a baritone guitar. Cost me about $200, but I put a couple $100 into new pickups, new tuners, sanding the frets down. Ugh, listen to that ring. So good. It's not very heavy, and I love the sounds and textures I can get from it. But generally I love all the instruments I play. I love drums, really love drums, love percussion, love bass, and I love them all for different reasons, you know? What boots are those in that picture? They're very cool. Let's see, these are Grip Fasts by Solovair. Solovairs, of course, are Doc Martens like they were made in the 1990s before the quality control got really shitty. So, they have the shiv in the sole, and these have nice steel toes. I just love these. Classic style combat boots. So good. I got these from Fashionation in Denver when I went there last year. Cost me about $300. Worth every penny. How did it go your first time performing music for a public audience? Doesn't matter how small of a function it was, just your first time performing on stage for a non-family/friend public audience. I'm not going to talk about a guitar recital I did at 11 years old. I'm not going to talk about school band concerts I did in 6th grade or 7th grade. I'm going to talk about singing on stage for Lords of Acid in Los Angeles. That was a spur-of-the-moment thing because their singer quit the night before the show and went back to Belgium. And that left the band going, okay, so we need singers for the show, and I happened to be at the right place at the right time. I offered my services, sort of half-jokingly, but also I was totally willing to go on stage if they needed me to do so. So Mr. Pragakon said, "Can you sing Take Control?" I sat in my chair, I sang it for him, and then he said, "Can you do Rough Sex?" Still seated in my chair without warming up, I sang Rough Sex for him. He said, "Okay, you're singing for us tonight." And with a few hours to prep, I went into the bathroom in the venue, in the backstage area, and I started warming up. I was listening to the songs over and over again to make sure that my cues were on time. I wrote out my cues on note cards, and when the show finally happened and it came to my time to get on stage, I was dressed up, courtesy of his wife Inya, who did my makeup and put me in her dress. I had to dress the part for Lords of Acid. I just walked out there. I wasn't nervous at all. This was, getting to perform music on stage has always been a lifelong goal, and not only was I doing it, I was doing it with one of my favorite bands ever. I just got out there and I winged it, man. You know, my voice, when I screamed, "Los Angeles!" like, it just reverberated through that venue, through the PA system. My voice boomed, and eventually I stopped looking at the note cards and I looked over to Praga. I was like, "Hey, count me in." And that meant that I could focus on my dancing, focus on my breathing. Now, mind you, my performance wasn't perfect. You know, I was out of breath for a couple notes, my hair got caught in my mouth at one point, but it clearly made an impression on a lot of people, because I had a lot of people after the show tell me, "Hey, you did awesome, you were awesome on stage." That warmed my heart. And of course, that was an unforgettable night. It's going to be a long time before I go to a show that tops that. What's a show that you went into with little expectations but was blown away by their performance? So I went to this Buzzovin show and there was another band playing, and I wanted to see those bands, but Cro-Mags was also on the bill. I had never heard Cro-Mags music and didn't know what to expect, but the other bands that night were fucking terrible. They sucked. Cro-Mags, on the other hand, this band that I'd never heard, they blew me away. They got on stage, they rocked it. There was somebody stage diving, there was moshing, the most that would ever happen that night, and I became a fan that night. Good job, Cro-Mags. If you can go back to any concert, what would it be? Concerts that I've already seen that I was alive for? 9 Inch Nails, Cleveland, 2022. I'm still blown away by how much of a 1 in a million show that was. They brought a lot of their old members back on stage for the last few songs, and it was incredible. And not just the show, but also, you know, the friendships, the people I met, the circumstances surrounding it. It was just a really great time. Skinny Puppy's final show, December 5th, 2023. It was emotional overload because it was also Ogre's birthday. And admittedly, I did get a little teary-eyed during the last song. They played Candle. That was the final song that band ever played. Agalok, September of 2023, that was incredible. My first death metal show, Carcass, Obituary, Noisem, Exhumed. That still remains one of my favorite shows. The Cure, New Orleans, 2023. I've been to so many great shows. I'd love to relive them, but sometimes you just gotta embrace everything in the moment, because once these moments are gone, they're gone. Is the video about The Process by Skinny Puppy coming out anytime soon? I feel like that album gets a bad rep, but I actually quite enjoy it. That is one of my top 3 favorite Skinny Puppy albums. I've always loved it. I never quite understood the hate for it myself. Maybe it's a generational thing. Maybe you had to be there. Because I was born in '95, and by the time I got into Skinny Puppy, I just looked at it as one of Skinny Puppy's old albums, pre-breakup. And so, you know, for me, the stylistic differences didn't bother me. Every Skinny Puppy album's different from one another. I've always wanted to do a video on The Process because it's a tragic story. There was a lot that went into the making of that album, and there was a lot of stuff that went into the making of the albums afterwards, so yeah. At some point I'm going to sub to Kevin's Patreon and I'm going to watch those videos he did on The Process. I was kind of waiting on him to do those videos before I dove my feet into it. But I haven't really felt that motivated to do a Skinny Puppy video because that last one I did, I put a lot of time and work into and barely anybody watched it. Maybe it was just a bad time of the year, maybe it was because I hadn't uploaded anything in a while. I don't know, but I was pretty hurt by the lack of viewership on that video, and if anybody wants to rectify that situation, the video is called Skinny Puppy's Final Rap in Los Angeles. The silver lining is that everybody in the band saw it and loved it. Kevin posted it on his Patreon, and I was so grateful. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Skinny Puppy. Do you enjoy any black metal? Yes, absolutely. Darkthrone, Immortal, Emperor, Satyricon, Agalok, you know, they're black metal for the most part. Wolves in the Throne Room, Bathory, Watain, plenty of great black metal albums out there, and yeah, I consider it part of my bloodline. Excellent stuff. What's your least favorite Nine Inch Nails album? Hesitation marks. I got it the day it came out, didn't like it then, tried listening to it again a few months ago, and still didn't like it. I've really tried with that album. And here's the thing, I love With Teeth, I love Year Zero, I love The Slip, I love the trilogy. Hesitation marks, people defend it, and I don't get it. You know, it's not even the modular sound of it, it's poppier than normal, which, whatever, but like, I don't know, to me the songs just aren't there. And even when it came out, I listened to it and I thought, you know, this sounds very current of the times. And years later, when people listen to it, they're gonna think, yep, this is a 2013 album. Sure enough, I was right. I mean, there are a couple songs on there I like, but generally it just... I don't know what went wrong there. I don't know if I'm supposed to exist in some separate universe to be able to enjoy it, but when Not the Actual Events came out, I was relieved. I love that EP. I also love Add Violence, and I love Bad Witch. You know, a lot of people don't like the trilogy. A lot of people are like, oh, well, you know, Nine Inch Nails aren't as innovative now. I mean, did you hear about the devices and techniques that they used when making some of the stuff on the trilogy? That looping, distorting thing that they do in the background world in the last 10 minutes of the song? 3 questions, and I'm only going to answer number 2 because I've talked about the other 2. Will you do a video on pre-Filth Pig Ministry? Maybe I will, but it's probably not going to be the album that everybody's expecting. I'm sure some people are going to be like, oh, you should do one on Psalm 69, you should do one on With Sympathy, you should do one on The Land of Rape and Honey. I want to do one on Twitch. Yeah. Why? Because I feel like maybe that album isn't talked about enough. I mean, I've talked about Land of Rape and Honey, I've talked about Mind is a Terrible Thing to Taste, I've talked about Psalm 69, I've talked about those at length in those big ministry videos I did, and I feel like I've pretty much got them covered. But as far as Twitch, there's some pretty interesting production techniques, and it's a cool album. What's your opinion on Chris Barnes' voice nowadays? It is a good thing that he quit smoking. Because he's capable of having a great voice, he's capable of writing great songs and putting out great albums with 6 Feet Under, but there are so many interviews I've seen Chris Barnes in where he looks like he was barely functional. And I know a lot of people are going to be like, well, weed's not addictive, weed's good for you, weed's healthy, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I'm sure the health benefits are pretty beneficial for a lot of people, but it can be abused, and you can become dependent on it. And Chris clearly became dependent because, my goodness, some of those interviews I saw, he was a wasteoid, man. Hopefully he gets some of his voice back. There's a story, it was one of the David Bowie albums that Bowie did in the 2000s. In the middle of recording the album, he quit smoking. And according to the producer, Tony Visconti, Bowie got 5 octaves of his voice back. So yeah, let's wait and see. What was the moment you fell in love with music? Well, I've loved music pretty much my whole life. When I was a kid, I used to just sit on the swing with my little CD player and have my headphones on, and that CD player would come with me everywhere. Car rides, the amusement park, wherever. When I was about 7, I was in the back seat of my grandpa's car, and we were listening to AC/DC, TNT to be exact. And that song made me want to pick up guitar. What do you think about metal elitism? Is gatekeeping necessary to some extent, or is it just, for lack of a better word, mean? I think it depends. Now, if somebody's walking up to you after they see your shirt and they ask you to name 3 songs, that's bullshit, man. But, you know, we do need, in some way, to be able to say that, you know, things are not metal. So some pop star who's never heard Iron Maiden in their life, they're wearing an Iron Maiden shirt, that's not metal. You know, this isn't a Halloween costume or a fashion statement for us. This is our lifestyle. This is how we live. It's the same thing with goth music. You know, these fucking rappers talking about vampires and drinking blood doesn't make it goth. You know, in the wise words of Tyler Durden, sticking feathers up your butt does not make you a chicken. What was the key moment in your YouTube career that made you go from casually making videos to being consistent about it? And how has being a YouTuber affected your life outside of YouTube? So I've answered that latter part of the question earlier in the Q&A, but the key moment was when Carl Sanders from Nile posted my Nile video onto his Facebook page. And I saw in the comments that a bunch of people thought it was hilarious, they loved it. And I was thinking, you know, I got something special here. I think I can make a lot of people happy doing this. Because this wasn't just something that was making myself happy and that I could let this outlet out for a lot of people like me who were possibly alone in their small towns and didn't have anybody to talk music with. This was getting attention from a lot of cool people. And eventually that video I did, 7 Churches vs. Scream Bloody Gore, which was the first death metal album, that got posted on Reddit and the video blew up. And that also gave me the push to keep going. Just the response that I got from the audience was incredible and still amazes me to this day. What do you think is the most impactful extreme metal album ever released in terms of influence? I'd say as far as the Butterfly Effect, Morbid Tales by Celtic Frost. Sure, there was black metal by Venom, but we're talking extreme metal. Oh boy. Morbid Tales and To Megatherion caused so many bands to change their sound and get heavier. And that includes the American bands. Now, in Sweden, as far as the death metal scene, we have Entombed Left Hand Path. All those death metal bands started going to the same studio. And to this day, people cite Left Hand Path as an inspiration for their vocals, their songwriting, their guitar tone. And in America, of course, we have 2 albums I'm going to pick, and those albums are Obituary, Slowly We Rot, and Morbid Angel, Altars and Madness. You gotta keep in mind, there weren't albums like this at the time. And, you know, the extremity of those albums influenced so many bands. And you know what? I dare say Severed Survival by Autopsy. No, a lot of people aren't going to give that album props it deserves, but Autopsy influenced Entombed, they influenced Cannibal Corpse, they influenced a lot of bands. It was not just that death doom style they did, but also the gore, the lyrics. It was so over the top, and it was amazing! What's your favorite part of being a content creator? What's your not favorite part? I'd say just being able to express myself has been absolutely awesome. Being able to see what I can do that's similar to a lot of the movies and the music and the art that I like. You know, a lot of that stuff is a challenge for me because to me, I see and hear that stuff and I'm like, let's see if I can do it too. And it's been nice. The not favorite part, you know, a lot of people are going to say the trolls and the negative comments. That doesn't bother me so much. What bothers me is the lack of push from YouTube, you know, fighting the algorithm, because it's all being corporatized, it's all being sanitized, and I don't want to fit myself into a night show and glitter and showbiz box. You know, I make stuff from the heart or I don't make it. You know, here's the thing, I don't make content. I make videos. Content to me is just mindless stuff that a lot of people stream because they want something to look at. No, I make stuff with the intention of people absorbing and enjoying it. That's the difference. What do you think of bands disappointing fans by not playing their biggest songs at their shows, or by releasing an album that's a completely different style than their fans expect? You gotta keep in mind that for a lot of these bands, it doesn't stop at the one night on tour that you see them. Sometimes they have 20, 40 dates on tour. They hear those songs night after night, and sometimes they're sick of it. They hate their own songs. I mean, yes, they're proud that they wrote them, they're proud that they resonate with a lot of people, but after you hear yourself and the style of music that you've played over and over and over and over, it gets boring. So yeah, of course these bands want to change up their sound. A lot of people, I think, need to adjust their expectations. You know, people get on Trent Reznor for not making albums that sound like Broken or The Downward Spiral. But if I want to hear Broken or The Downward Spiral, I would just go listen to Broken or The Downward Spiral. I'm okay with him making Year Zero. I'm okay with him making With Teeth. I'm okay with him making Bad Witch. Those old albums will always be there. But the thing is, we grow as people, and the albums stay the same. The world around us changes, we change, and if you're fortunate, the artists you listen to, you can change with them. You know, and hopefully your change aligns with their change, and if not, there's always other stuff out there. I get it though. When I saw Queens of the Stone Age, they didn't play Sick Sick Sick, but that's okay. They play it every other night on tour, and I'm totally fine with whatever they have to offer me that night. Because regardless of whatever the set list was, Queens of the Stone Age gave me a great show. If you could only get the full discography of 5 bands to bring to a deserted island, which bands would you choose? Why are you doing this to me? Just 5, it's so hard to pick. Okay, Agaloc's gotta be one of them because they're going to spiritually uplift me. I would say Typo Negative because, you know, Peter Steele, he'll keep you alive. Peter Steele is life. 9 Inch Nails, of course, Skinny Puppy, and I guess I could say Susie and the Banshees because other than The Rapture, I like every album in their catalog, so there you go. You know, Susie and the Banshees, there's a lot of stuff to offer with each album. What's your favorite decade of metal? The 90s. I love the 80s, and I really love the 2000s. I think the 2000s are pretty underrated, but the 90s, not just with death metal, but with metal in general. That was the beginning of sludge metal. You know, you have bands like Dystopia, and as far as death metal, a lot of my favorite death metal albums came out in the 90s. You know, Deicide, Mental Funeral, Left Hand Path, Slaughter of the Soul. That whole Gothenburg scene, goth metal, started in the 90s. Typo Negative. A lot of great innovative bands, but don't stop at one decade. Don't stop at a time period. Listen to it all. Because like I said, the 2000s metal scene, that was great. You know, Nile were at the top of their game, Origin, Cryptopsy, they put out some great stuff. What's the nicest metal guitarist you've met so far? I'd say the guys from Immolation were fucking awesome people. Of course, the guys in Obituary, they're gentlemen, always have been, probably always will be. Of course, Benny Labella from X-Order, he was kind towards me anytime I ever spoke to him, so yeah. And the Agalock guys. What is your daily routine? When I get up, I drink some water. That helps with brain activity, along with other things. I write my fears and resentments onto notebook paper. I also write what's called morning pages, which basically it's stream of consciousness writing, and as long as you clear your mind, that leaves sort of a blank slate for how the rest of your day is going to go. It's also going to help me get into the meditative mindset because I do Vedic meditation 20 minutes at a time, sometimes twice a day, and it's pretty great. That leaves me with a bit of a blank slate, makes the rest of my days seem a little easier. I'm more prepared to handle my tasks and whatever I have to do. And yeah, that's basically the morning routine, and you know, through the evening I listen to music, I watch a lot of YouTube, and I just do what I do. It's really not that organized. Dream show lineup. The bands don't have to be around anymore. The Ramones, Agalock, 9 Inch Nails, Skinny Puppy, Typo Negative, Susie and the Banshees, Caius. Yeah, let's get all those bands together, and the audience is gonna be like, what the fuck? These bands don't belong on the same bill together, but I don't know, it's a dream lineup. Do you read comics? Have you heard of Brian Pulido's Lady Death and Evil Ernie of Coffin Comics? I do like comics, I just don't really read them that often. I like graphic novels myself. Let's see, I'm a pretty big fan of the Eastman and Laird Ninja Turtles comics. I like the Army of Darkness comics. The Frank Miller stuff like Sin City. The Batman stuff. For the most part that he's done, some of it's downright horrible. Some of the Daredevil comics. The Crow graphic novel, of course. You know, I'm into different stuff. But mainly, I just wait till friends or people tell me about what's great, and if I hear about it often enough, I will go and read it. Do you think it will make another video non-band or concert related, like Marshmallows or Garden of Metal? Absolutely. I love doing those type of videos. I have a ton of ideas scribbled down on paper. I also have stuff in my iPhone notes. And, you know, whatever videos I make is just what I'm feeling at the moment, but I absolutely love doing projects like that. Garden of Metal was fun. That video took 3 days for me to shoot, and that's because it was so goddamn hot when I was shooting it that I was going in the house between takes to go wipe myself off because it was just... wow, it was brutal. Believe me. Do you prefer live acoustic drums or a drum machine? Well, it depends on the band. For bands like Godflesh, I definitely prefer their drum machine stuff. They tried using a real drummer on the Hymns album, and it didn't really sound like Godflesh for me. Ministry, it depends. I like a good combination of the two. Like, it's hard to beat Ray Washam and Bill Rieflin. So, they did use samples early in their career, but they made them sound good. For albums like The Last Sucker, they used programmed drums and it sounded like a demo. I can't help but wonder how that album would have sounded if they used a real drummer. Just like Skinny Puppy, they kind of use a combination of the two. And especially live. When I saw them live, not only were they using the drum tracks that were played on the albums, but they also had Justin playing real drums. That helped accent the music. And for live acoustic drums, there's just nothing that beats the heart and soul of the band. And that being the guy playing the real drums. We all know you love AC, but what are your thoughts on Seth's other controversial projects? I gotta be careful with some of it because even with AC, here's the thing about Seth. You kind of have to know about his life a little bit to understand his music. And especially after his coma, he just got needlessly mean-spirited. I mean, it was kind of mean-spirited in the 90s, but, you know, it was written to be funny. It was childish, it was crass, it was blue, it was potty humor, it was immature, but it was funny for the most part. You know, when they're writing songs like You're Gay, Y-O-U-R-E-G-A-Y, You're Gay, or writing songs like 311 Sucks, or Your Band's in the Cutout Bin, or You Live on a Houseboat, that's funny to me. But once he starts talking about Nazis and race and dropping the N-bomb in songs, that's where I gotta draw the line. So, you know, I don't know. It just makes me wonder how things would have turned out if he lived. What's your weirdest / most unhinged / most memorable meeting with a fan? Which one is your favorite? Keep up the good work. Well, my fan interactions have always been pretty pleasant. The only strange interaction I've had was at the Slaughter Q Fest in Atlanta many years ago. I was in line with my girlfriend at the time. We were getting lunch, and there was one guy who wanted a picture with me, and I happily obliged, and he walked away. He came back a few seconds later. Hey, the picture didn't save. Can I have another one? Yeah, sure. And then he walked away. And he came back and asked for another picture, and I was sitting there like, okay, let's do this. And this kept going on over and over and over, and after probably 7 or 8 times, I was like, okay, make sure the picture saves this time. Like, I didn't lose my temper with him. I was trying not to let him show that I was annoyed, but I was over there like, man, I'm in line to get lunch. Like, come on. And that's as far as that's gone as far as in-person interactions. Of course, I've always had amazing interactions with a lot of cool people over the years that I've seen at shows or seen out in public. I was eating dinner with my family once in New Orleans, and it wasn't even a metal-themed place. We were at a pizza place, and I had 2 people walk up to the table going, hey, I love your videos, man. Not even at a show. That was so cool to me. And it impressed them as well, because they were over there like, oh yeah, you're coming along with the YouTube thing. Well, I would like to thank all of you, my little darlings, for participating in this Q&A. May we meet again. I look forward to having you watch all of my future videos, and giving my past videos the much-needed views they deserve. So, with all that, grind on!